You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. All right, welcome to episode 9 of the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me. That's my employee, Kellie. She helps me with so many things at She Dreams of Alpine, like marketing and social media. But another big role for Kellie at She Dreams of Alpine is being the community manager of our core program, the Backpacking Badass program and community. So today I wanted to do a podcast with her where we talk about some like hot topics that are happening right now, kind of in our community this time of the year, like what of our students are thinking about inside of the Backpacking Badass community. And I wanted to bring her in because she's in there all the time. She has a really good pulse and like feel for what the students are thinking about, talking about. I do too. So we'll kind of like be riffing back and forth. She's in there supporting, coaching our clients. And so she's very in tune with the heartbeat of the Backpacking Badass community. But before we dive into our hot topics today, I want to have Kellie introduce herself. So Kellie, why don't you say hello to everyone? Feel free to introduce yourself a bit more. Tell everyone about your background, all the things.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited. So, I am the social media and community manager. I joined the team at She Dreams of Alpine in 2021. So, I have a little bit of an opposite story of Allison, where I was chronically outdoors my whole life, not necessarily being like an adventure family, but I grew up on like lakes and rivers, and I loved playing in the forest with my friends. I would like beg my parents when Survivor was a big thing to just let me stay in the woods all summer. And they were like, no, that's insane. So I went on to get a degree in biology. That was like my pathway to stay outside with a focus in conservation. So prior to She Dreams of Alpine, I did a lot of field research and a lot of land management and a lot of like public lands management and working as a public servant. So getting people outdoors. So I've been passionate about that for a long time. And then just a couple fun facts is that I used to manage over like 1,000 acres of public land and all the programming and the trails and things that happened on it. I've swam with alligators and manatees when I used to do freshwater turtle research. And
Oh,
my
jealous.
favorite backpacking trail of all time so far that I've done is Isle Royale National Park.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of our community has actually gone and done that. You actually wrote a blog post for,
Yes.
excuse me, our She Dreams of Alpine blog. So if anybody is interested in doing the Isle Royale, Kellie did this trip herself. It's very logistical, and she put all of the details on like how you can plan this trip for yourself on the She Dreams of Alpine blog as like a trip guide because we have a lot of trip guides out there, but not as much out where you are living.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So I'm in the Great Lakes region. So I really love the Great Lakes. They're incredible. I think people really don't I think they underestimate them a lot. So, actually I was reflecting on adventure planning, which we're going to get into in a minute, but like I think one of my big adventure goals that I want to claim is like going back to do Isle Royal solo because I did
oh,
it with somebody last
interesting.
time and we kind of did like a loop.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the logistics would just be easier solo and
Yeah.
like to do the hike exactly how I want to do it. So,
I was gonna say,
yeah,
would you do
and
it differently?
yes, because I want to hike like harbor to harbor, one end to the other. And so The time that I did it, we did a loop from Rock Harbor because it was a little less expensive to
Yeah.
do it that way because you have to like use ferries. There is no traffic. So you're getting like paying every time you have to use like some kind of boat transportation or seaplane transportation. So, yes, I think logistically for me, it'll actually be easier to plan solo. So I
Yeah.
think that might be some of my 2025 adventure planning, which happens to be one of our hot topics because
Yeah.
it's on everybody's brain right now in the community.
Yeah. Thinking about like what you want to do. I've been thinking about that too, like what I want 2025 to kind of look like. I mean, it's tis the time of the year. So, okay, so hot topics. This is just an idea. If you guys like this style of podcast, like Kellie and I can hop on every, like, I don't know, maybe once a quarter and talk about like what's going on in the community and stuff like that. Definitely let us know if you listen to this episode and you're like, I liked this banter sort of deep dive into certain different backpacking topics, and we'll keep doing them. But this is just a little bit of an experiment. We thought the idea behind it is like sharing little behind the scenes of like what our students that are very backpacking and outdoor focused, what they're thinking about, what we're coaching on a lot of right now. Because sometimes there tends to be themes, like especially in different parts of the year, we'll have like different things that we're consistently coaching people on, and share some of that advice here on the podcast. So, as Kellie alluded to, our first hot topic in the backpacking badass community is around 2025 adventure planning. So, like, people are kind of winding down 2024, looking back, thinking like what they got to do, what they didn't get to do. They're thinking like, what do I want to do in 2025? What adventures and experiences do I want to have? And we think like it's the perfect time of the year to like wind down and do some planning. And we do a lot of like supportive events for this kind of thing too during this time of the year for our students. Um, right now, we're seeing a lot of our students, even in our community, brainstorming their goals and adventures in the group. So, Kellie, like kind of knowing that, are you seeing a lot of our clients thinking about 2025 adventures? And if so, like, what are you seeing pop up?
Oh yes. Yes, and I love the way our students are handling it. So, I have a couple examples that I want to share because I think they're really cool examples of how to kind of some tips how people can think about their reflections and how people are like using our community to keep this momentum up. So we have Angelique. She is an ambassador out on the West Coast, which means she's an alumni. She went through the program and she was doing so amazing and was our ambassadors are really invested. Like even
They're
as
like
students,
mentors
yeah, as
to our
students, they
community.
were really active in their community. They showed up for other people. They were really encouraging. And so we invite those people to be ambassadors and so, in addition to the coaches, you have these peers that are in there all the time helping. So, Angelique is amazing. She's incredible. We've each gotten to hike with her and go on a couple adventures with her. So, she is in a weekly check in. She just mentioned she's considering some big 2025 adventures. She's like an ultra trail runner. She doesn't call herself an ultra trail runner. She calls herself a
But
trail
she's
runner, but she's
totally into running lots. Yeah, long
yeah,
miles.
she very committed to her running. So she said she's considering things like trail running in the Italian Dolomites and hiking in British Columbia,
Hmm.
climbing in Red Rocks, Colorado because she's also done some climbing and winter sports like snowboarding. She did some ice climbing, I think like last year or something. So she's thinking about her year in like chunks. So like
Yeah,
maybe not all of these big things will happen, but she's trying to plug them into her busy schedule because Angelique is a doctor. Her husband is a doctor. They have children. They have two children. And so they are a very busy family that works
yeah,
long hours, lots of commitments. And so she takes her kids' schedules, her family's schedules. And so she's planning things for herself, but she's also thinking about like where she can fit those adventures in with family vacations and things like that. So that's I really admire how Angelique approaches her adventure planning to prioritize time to regenerate herself, from her very demanding career and home responsibilities.
Yeah.
And then balancing that with being the pinnacle of adventure in her family. She is the one
Right.
that gets everyone out. She takes her husband to Havasu Pie Falls. She takes her kids to Trans Catalina to run marathons. I mean, so while also taking Sundays for herself to run with her friends or going on a solo backpacking trip or coming with us on a backpacking trip. So Angelique's incredible. Some other things that have been really cool to see is we've got another student, Casey, and she is on the Eastern US, and she used the group recently to gauge interest if anyone wanted to go on a 2025 backpacking trip in the White Mountains in the Northeastern US. And
Right. I
so,
love this. I love this about like our students lately. We're starting, especially as we've got the community's gotten bigger, we're starting to see pockets of people like all over the US and even in Canada. And they're like, they're reaching out to be like, who wants to join this trip? And
yeah,
doing that.
you
I'm
know, and
seeing
it
that more and more.
And it has me always thinking like we don't have official chapters. These are just people meeting up on their own time. But it feels like we're hurtling towards it, because our students are so active in their communities and using the community, our online community, to connect that they're able to hang out. So Casey reached out and I expressed interest to go like hang out with them on my off time. There's another ambassador, Heather, on the East Coast. She and I meet up like every October for a backpacking trip. She also expressed interest. So um I think Casey made like a little group chat or another Facebook group
To
specifically for
coordinate
people
it.
that wanted to plan. Yeah. And then
What time of the
on
year
that
is like
same,
White Mountains good to go backpacking in? I'm not as familiar with that
it
area.
would be, I mean, it's
Like summer?
northeastern, so definitely like summer or fall would be gorgeous, right? Because it's those like rolling mountains and just diverse forest. It's beautiful. So, and then on that same note, we have another really active group that formed this year on their own. We call them the SoCal Baddies, but it's a group of Southern California women, and Angelique is one of them. Another ambassador is one of them too, Carrie. They're both so cool. Everybody in this group is so cool. I can't even like humble brag on our students because it's not humble at all. So the Southern California girls, they were really active students that were each individually committed to their goals. And they were posting so much in the Facebook community that we have that they started like noticing each other. And they're like, hey, I have a goal to bag 6 peaks. Do you want to come on any of those hikes with me? And so it was this like it wasn't even slow. It was like this fast burn, platonic friendship, like
Right.
romance. It was
A
great to
lot of those
watch.
people like joined around the same time too, because I remember a
Yeah.
lot of them were not all of them, but a lot of them were joining. They came into the program around January of 2024 last year. They did like our New Year cohort, like live cohort that we do at the beginning of the year, and got like so much momentum there and started doing like a lot of stuff together.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting when you like join the program in one of those big open launches, right? Because you do kind of get those bonuses that end up bringing you in with like a group. So
Group of
that's
people.
always really fun. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so what the SoCal Baddies did is they ended up making their own Facebook group. And then they also just posted a survey and they're like, influence our schedule next year. So they're
Nice.
now taking like organizing surveys for people in their area so they can organize different kinds of trips, whether it's day hiking, backpacking. I know that Carrie organizes trips with her friends. That's like moms taking their kids out to
Yeah.
like hike in campsites. So they're planning all these different trips, not necessarily just like one. They're kind of like looking at this in a bigger scale, more than just one trip. So,
Right.
and what's so nice about going on trips with people in the community, which we've both done, is that it's it's really fun to go on these non-official trips because it's so easy. It's like relaxing. I don't have to worry. about, and this isn't to say I love taking beginners out, but having people be self-sufficient and then having somebody that I can like talk to and talk through decisions with. Like when I go
Mhm.
backpacking with our students and we're trying to make route decisions or camp decisions, like we can go back and forth and make really, really solid decisions together. And so it's just like it feels like a day off, like just getting to enjoy it.
Totally.
Um and really sink into it. And everybody gets to do that. So and and being able to talk through like how you're feeling through the day and not feeling I remember when I was a beginner and nobody really explained plans to me and I would just cry and cry and cry in the back. I would be like way in the back. I would hope that they would wait for me at junctions or hope that the mileage wasn't going to be like 20 miles in a day. I had no idea what my limits were, what to expect, because I had no idea what was going on and nobody was like
Right.
explaining that to me as a new person. And so it gives you really good perspective, like when you know all those things and come in with all those skill sets, bringing other people out or having people that are self-sufficient and really strong group contributors.
And I know like all of our students would never like go on a trip without like having some idea of like what they're expecting to, because they're all like, what's the trip plan? What's the safety plan like beforehand, you
Yeah.
know? So you
So
guys are
that
like
that
well prepared.
yeah. So that brings me to a good question that I saw come up in a Q&A recently about like, when you are a beginner or you're going out there with other people, maybe you do have somebody that is mentoring you or you're getting into it yourself and you
Hmm.
don't have that mentor. How do you know what your limit is? Where your curiosity meets your hiking ability, like where does that come into play? And obviously, this changes as you gain experience, but how do you know when you're properly equipped to take on more difficult trails, especially if your intention is to go solo hiking or backpacking?
Right. I think this is a really good question. So, when you are just starting out, and especially if you like, because a lot of our students do join us because they are still figuring out the community piece or they want to go solo more often because it's just easier to plan. Um, it can be like hard to understand, well, like when am I taking on too much? Like when am I biting off more than I can chew? And as far as like I think there's so much like we can push ourselves to do, but like when we're going solo, we're just taking in a lot of different considerations. One thing to think about is like when you're first starting, it's just to keeping to class one style hikes, which are just like very straightforward trails that you're not having to use your hands and climb or scramble too much. Those are generally going to be like technically less hard. And you can find tons of them that are going to be challenging in other ways, but not necessarily challenging in more technical, like unsafe ways, like class two or class three hikes. If you haven't done stuff like that before, could feel like it's going to start to get scarier. The route finding could get a little bit harder, just depends on where you're going. So that's something to consider. And then there are obvious certain levels to me where it's like you want extra technical training, like mountaineering, rock climbing, you want extra safety technical training with things like that. So when it comes to actually testing your limits personally, on things that are a little less technical or like setting a big goal, a stretch goal, like maybe in 2025, you're like, I've done these trips before, but I want to do something bigger in 2025. What I do is like, I'm not afraid to set that goal for myself, but I'm always going in with like a backup plan in case like I need to pivot and change my mind. Like, you know, unless I know it's like I can figure it out. Like there comes a point when you have like a lot of experience, you're like, I'm pretty sure I can do this. And like, but every time you need to like think through if things got unsafe or I wasn't comfortable anymore, like what would I do then? If you think through some of those things ahead of time, then you can do harder things that are you don't know where your limit is. Like you're trying to figure it out. And be free, like feel free to turn around. So like an example of this to like make that more tangible is I remember when I did my very first solo backpacking trip, I think it was like 2015. I can't remember exactly. It was to do Mount Langley. I wanted to summit Mount Langley, which is a 14er in California. And I was doing it as like a 2 or 3 day trip. And I was going out there solo. It was October-ish, so I knew that there was a little bit of snow. And I didn't want to do technical stuff, even though I did have some basic mountaineering experience. I just didn't want to do technical stuff alone. So my plan was to go out there, scope it out, and then at any point where I felt like it was going to be too much for me, like with my experience at that time, then I would turn around. And that's actually what ended up happening is I made it to one lake, and the pass that I originally was going to go up was covered with snow. But then I was like, okay, well, this is not a no-go. I know there's another pass. So I pivoted my plan to go to another pass. And that pass was sunny, not filled with snow. So it had all melted. So I went up that pass. That was New Army Pass. And then I got to top of New Army Pass and I was looking at Langley. It was covered in snow. I was just like a little bit nervous about it. So I just like gave myself permission to turn around. And that was me testing my limits and not being sure if like I felt comfortable enough to do Langley, but still going for it. So I think that's just an example of like when you're kind of, especially when you're solo, testing it out. And then when you're with a group, it's similar. Sometimes you have to make calls as a group. And if somebody in your group isn't comfortable with somebody, you got to be willing to either like coach them through it or turn around with them because that can happen as well too.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely got to take your ego out of testing your limits,
Yeah.
and not make it mean something about yourself.
Exactly. And you can go back with more information. Like the Langley one, I was like, I'm gonna come back. And I went back the next year, I think, with my friend in like earlier season, and we did it and it was amazing and it was fun. But I was like still so proud of going out there and trying it. And I think you will be too. So no, don't ever like count yourself out just because it's a bit harder than something you haven't done before. So um thinking about this, can you give me some examples of questions, like thinking about adventure planning, kind of coming back to that theme? Like, can you give me some examples of questions that you would ask yourself this time of the year to sort of look back at your prior year in order to start like framing up and thinking about what kind of adventures you want in the new year?
Yes, for sure. I'm actually like deep, deep in this work right now because we do this kind of reflection with clients in our adventure journal that pairs with our adventure planner. And I just happened to like be updating, I started updating both of them this week.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very fresh on my mind. So I think as like with your example about Langley, one point that we really like to bring across to our community in these reflection is no matter if you achieved all your goals last year, you barely made it through the year, or you landed somewhere in between, there's lessons in it all, right?
Yeah.
Allison talks about this a lot of like the 50-50 and lessons from mountains. And in my case, I don't live in an area with mountains, right? So it's just like my wilderness lessons. And so we very much encourage getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. So when you dive into these types of reflections and some of the questions that we'll get into, some of the answers might not be comfortable when they come up.
Mm,
Like when you're reflecting on your year and it didn't go how you planned.
right.
So still
But it's
sit with those
still worth
feelings
asking
too.
yourselves those questions. Yes.
Yes. So it's still worth being uncomfortable, right? Like backpacking is not a comfortable sport or
Backpacking
hobby.
is an exercise in being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah, and hiking in general and being in the outdoors because it has so many unpredictable variables, right, that are out of our control in so many instances. And
Which
then
is so
things,
beautiful, actually, though, because I think it's
yes.
like we do get to a point in backpacking where we're like, we get comfortable with being uncomfortable because we enjoy everything it is about being out there, the adventure of it and stuff. And
And
I
then
think
at
that's
the
just
end
such a
of it, you're,
beautiful metaphor for life, like all
yeah,
the things you do in your
and
life.
then at the end of it, you did this challenging thing and you're like, I did that. I didn't even
Yeah.
think I could make it. Like at some points I was thinking, they're gonna have to airlift me out of here, but I did it. And
Yeah.
so that's really transformative in your life, like off the trail too. So in the reflection, in our adventure journals that we just started re-updating for 2025, it's kind of in like three parts for the journaling, right? And then you get this the adventure planner is like the actual planning. So we always recommend to do the reflection
Look
first
back
to guide the planning.
before you look
So,
forward.
yes,
Go
so
slow
the
to go fast.
yes, so the three parts of the reflection is first we guide through or guide students through reflecting on the previous year. This is going to be questions like, what did you love doing? What did you do a lot of? And what were you proud of doing? What skills maybe you picked up along the way? What did you not get to do? Did you struggle with anything?
Mm,
And how do you feel about all those things? That's a
yeah.
really important one, right? Like really asking yourself honestly how you feel about them. And then asking what you want more of. Like maybe you want to up level an adventure. Maybe you want to try something again and get I call them like redemption arcs. I don't want to call them
Mhm.
revenge because that doesn't feel like the right emotion. But it does feel like redeeming when you get to go try something again and see in very like tangible way your improvements. Like maybe you got further on the trail, or maybe you stayed longer, or maybe you stayed solo, or you stayed the night. It could be so much. So,
I I think those questions are great too because it also can help you like look at them and be like, what was the reason why I didn't get to do some of these things that I had originally wanted to do? And do I like my reasons? Because sometimes I think we make a decision. We had a plan at the beginning of the year and we're like, I want to do this thing. And then later we decide, like, for whatever reason, it's not a priority. Like, and we have our own backs in that decision and it feels clean. But then sometimes, like, we don't do something and we're like, I wish I would have. Like
right.
it like you can see the reasons behind it are like maybe you were doubting yourself, maybe, for whatever reason it is. I don't know.
Well, and
But
I
yeah.
think too that I just lost my train of thought on that one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it just gives you a lot of insight. You're like, okay, well, like, how do I want to show up to the next year? I think
Right.
that's
Or
what's so important to the reflection piece.
And doing the reflection, this is the thought I had, doing the reflection at the end of the year, like sometimes when you're in it, you don't even know what's causing those things, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it takes like time and distance to get clarity. And so giving yourself time to sit down and actually dedicate looking back on it and being in the feelings of it when you're not so emotionally charged, right? Because
Right.
like when you're
Yeah.
in it, you're all in your amygdala brain, which is like really hard to think logically when you're thinking from the emotional brain. So the reflection at the end of the year is really powerful because you're not as deep into the things as you were, and
And
you can take the ego out of it a little bit.
don't skip this step. Like, I think it really helps the next step.
Yes, yeah, it really helps with the clarity and really getting clear on what you want and why it's important so that when you don't have motivation, which will happen. Motivation isn't like, you don't just do stuff because you're motivated. Sometimes it's
Right.
just you have to push through it. So then after we do all this reflection, we guide students through a brainstorming session. And this is where we ask them to get bold. Like, it doesn't have to make sense, right?
Yeah.
A couple episodes ago, you interviewed Marie Pierre, and she went from being like a pretty new backpacker on a 4-day trip to one day quickly deciding she was going to try to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, which is hiking from Mexico to Canada.
Right.
That didn't make sense to her, right? But so your big goals don't have to make sense, but if you're thinking about them, capture it, write it down, and ask yourself what your most adventurous year ever would look like for you. And I want
Hmm.
to emphasize for you because comparison will suck all of the fun out of everything. It's
Yes.
going to steal the joy. And this is a great example having me and you talk, right? Like you born and raised in Texas and then moved to really outdoorsy places, moved to mountains. I'm born and raised in Indiana and stayed in the Great Lakes region. And so my big adventures don't always look like yours. But like at the
Right.
beginning of the podcast, I was like, oh, I've swam with alligators and manatees when I used to do
Right.
turtle research. So it's like you can create big adventures no matter where you are. You just
Yeah.
have to be clear on what kinds of adventures are important to you and like don't worry about what big adventure looks like to somebody else. So
That's a great point.
be be bold in your brainstorming session. Just even if it doesn't make sense or you don't know how to do it, and there's tons of tips even in the, a couple episodes here in the early episodes that will help you like figure out those possibilities. You just have to be open to figuring things out and
And give
keep
yourself
moving
time,
forward.
I mean, actually, in the brainstorm, I always encourage people to just like write whatever comes up for you. You don't have to
Mhm.
do it all in 2025, but just like write anything that's like on your heart. And then like we guide you through like a planning process. Like
Right.
if you end up joining us for one of our events where we kind of do this process with you, which we'll do a big event in January, but we will guide you through like, okay, like let's get clear about what 2025 will look like. But in the brainstorming process, I would just write anything and everything that's like on your heart.
Right, because you don't know what's possible yet because the
Right.
plan may morph and change and you may like meet somebody that's like, like you did. You met somebody or your coworkers were like, "Come on this epic backpacking trip
Right.
that you
Yeah.
didn't even
Wasn't
know
on my
would
radar
change
at the
your
beginning of the
life."
year. Yeah.
Yeah, and while you're brainstorming and you're just getting every idea that comes out, no matter if it makes sense or not, there's probably going to be one that stands out
So
that
you like it.
does make sense, at least a little bit, like something where you're like, I think I could actually do this one. And it's going to be something that's really exciting. And so the last one, after you do this brainstorming, the last part is picking that big goal from your
Mhm.
brainstorming. And again,
Is
it may
your
not
is
have to make
yours the
sense.
Isle Royale?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure some out. Like that's probably
I
my big
mean, we're a little
outdoorsy
early. We
one.
still have time to think
Yeah.
about this, but I was just
I
curious.
know. Well, and then the Italian Dolomites are on my heart too. I think a hut to hut would
Oh,
be fun because that
Italian
seems like
Dolomites are beautiful. I've been there. I've
I
never
know,
really like
yeah.
haven't spent a ton of time there, but I have seen them. They're very
And the
pretty.
hut to huts just sound
Sounds
like the
lovely.
refugios. That just
Yes.
sounds so luxurious. Isle Royal is also luxurious. I didn't dig a single cat hole there. So anyway, when you claim that's I was following LNT. I just want to be clear. They have outhouses at every campsite. So
Yes. It's just different. Yeah.
yes. So after you claim your big goal, you're going to make a list of all the small things that need to happen. And you had a really good episode, episode 8, where you did this with your rock climbing. So I
Oh,
would
yes.
encourage people that if you didn't listen to episode 8 and you're interested in
It's
really
got a
deep
good lot of
diving,
journaling prompts that are like different than
yes.
these. Yeah.
It's Allison's big reflections on her big rock climbing goal that she set for 2024. So after you claim this big goal, you can start making a list of, okay, what do I need to actually do to make this goal happen? And you may not, again, you may not know all the answers now, but you may know your
I think I
jumping
might have
off
an
points.
idea.
You're on ramps, right? You're on ramps to get onto this big goal. So it may be like making friends, finding a community, putting yourself out there, learning new skills, um, getting outside more, training, maybe working with a trainer or getting a gym membership. So that will start giving you more confidence on being like, okay, this big goal is now more manageable.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like that three-part reflection process that we put into our adventure reflection journal at the end of
I'm
each year for
so stoked to see.
I know.
Kelly always like creates like a beautiful new design for our journals and our planners. And we have like a fun theme this year. We're like kind of leaning into the era tours sort of I theme, like spinning off of, Taylor Swift a little bit, but we're calling
Yes,
it your
and
adventure
girlhood.
era.
Yes. And
Your
like
adventure
very
era.
girlhood, I'm gonna lean into themes. Katie and I on the team were working on some of the planning for
Us,
that
yeah.
event, and we were just like girling out. It was a lot of fun. So there'll be a lot of like cutesy things. And that's I like designing stuff like that because so much of the outdoorsy stuff, um, it doesn't have I think that like our shoes are covered. Like there's always like pink and purple hiking shoes or running shoes. But I feel like there's not as much like really hyper feminine, girly, outdoorsy stuff. So, yeah, I like adding things into our special events that are a little more girlhood.
Yeah, I mean, it's just leaning into all different aspects. Cause I mean, like, I wouldn't even say we're like always super girly all the time, but like, I don't know. I just love color. I love bright colors.
Yes.
Like, I like it to be a little bit fun. Like, let's
Yes.
have some fun. Everything doesn't need to be olive green, like, and brown.
Which, and I love
So
those colors, but I
I mean, I
also
do too,
love
don't get me
teal and
wrong, but
pink.
like with a pop of, like some other bright color that's fun. I don't know. I think the outdoor industry is trending that way. Like you're seeing like Cotopaxi is super fun. Like
Yes.
I love that. So, okay, everyone, even non-backpacking badass students, you will have an opportunity to get your hands on our adventure planners and our reflection journal that we've been kind of like teasing and talking about here and those prompts that are in that because like there's way more than just that. That's just a little taste. We are working right now on a very special event for the new year. I kind of think I already said the name earlier, but we're calling it Your Adventure Era 5-Day Challenge. And it's going to be all about setting the stage for a year that is full of adventures in all aspects of your life. So we really want you to set the stage in January, thinking about like mind, body, soul, like friendships, how you want to grow, and helping you create like a vision for that plan and stepping into, and if you're already adventurous, like really getting clear on what that looks like for you again in the new year, like kind of going back to that concept of always redeciding like how you want to show up and being really purposeful and being really intentional about what you bring into the world. So that 5-day challenge, we're still working on it. So we don't have, a sign up page or anything yet. So just stay tuned. We're going to be talking about like honing your adventure mindset, creating that 2025 adventure plan, creating your dream adventure community, because this is a huge one, I think, for people is like, I want to find more community. So I want to talk about that. We're going to have a day dedicated to community. Talking about strengthening your adventure body. What is that going to look like for you in 2025? And then filling in those adventure skill gaps that you might have that you want to work on. So stay tuned for that event. We will probably announce on like how you can register for it. It's going to be a free event. That at the end of the month, keep an eye out for it. I'll definitely mention it here on the podcast. But a better way to make sure you don't miss announcements is to make sure that you're on my email list. I'm trying to think of a quick URL. You can join our email list really easily by getting on our starter kit. So if you went to shedreamsofalpine.com/kit, I believe,
Adventure.
or adventure, we
It's
have lots of, I'm going to put it
shedreamsofalpine.com
in the show
slash
notes.
adventure.
I will put it in the show notes. So I have all these short URLs and I forget them. Sometimes I should have like added it to my notes. But okay, we spent a lot of time on adventure planning. Let's move on to hot topic number 2. And the second hot topic that was, big in our community this year is kind of training in the off season, which I love because I think a lot of us in this time of the year tend to wind down our adventures in the winter season. And I sort of have like two thought processes around training during this time of the year, but I want to hear your thoughts first, Kellie. So what does training in the winter season usually look like for you?
Crocheting and drumming. Well, and I just say that because the slower season, right, when a lot of us do wind down, it does allow me to shift the focus to other passions where I'm not trying to like, pack in as much time in good weather as I can. So,
I was like, to
yeah,
be clear, she's not like crocheting and drumming and hiking at the same time.
I might be.
Though,
So,
mm.
in my heart. So, yeah, and I really noticed when I was busy with outdoor adventure goals this summer, training for like our hike in the Eastern Sierras, my drumming suffered, right? Or like I didn't
Yeah.
crochet as much. So
Yeah, it's hard to
I
fit
kind
in
of like,
everything.
Yeah, so I kind of lean into my creative passions when I do like spend less time outdoors.
Yeah.
But ways that I do still like to keep my body moving or connect outdoors. I've been doing yoga every day. I'm like over 30 days strong with that, with one of those YouTube 30-day challenges. So I like doing that, and doing it at home makes it very easy. I can just get up, I do it. I notice if I don't do it in the morning, like I suffer for it, throughout
Yeah.
the day. My body is like, please stretch. So I also am a roller skater, and I love roller skating at the rink. Um, it's
Hmm.
like it's like going clubbing for me is going jam skating at the rink. I also do love dancing, and we have a great dance studio here in town where I live. And so on occasion, I will check their class schedule and I will sign up for a dance class. Once in a while, I get a motivation to go to the gym. I have like Planet Fitness, so it's not expensive for me to keep a gym membership, but I'm not very
Yeah.
consistent with my gym usage. It's more of like training for our guided trips in the Sierras where I'm like going to the gym to use treadmills for elevation training or doing
Right.
cross. I do try to like fit some kind of strength training
Cross training.
in, yeah, or cardio. And we also just got our first bouldering gym for rock climbing. We don't have a top rope gym or anything yet. So I may try that this winter, but it means I have to give up my like off-season long
Mm.
nails,
Yeah,
which
you
I
can't have
don't
long
love.
nails with climbing. I keep trying and then I hate them. As soon as I start climbing, I'm like, no, I can't do this.
I know, and they're like, I grow them out, and so they're mine, and so I take a lot of pride in them, and I just like
Yeah.
I
You have
really
to
like
have
leaning
grubby
in.
nails.
Yeah, when I'm not being a dirtbag, it's nice to like lean into that. But and I also do love winter hiking because I really, especially for people that maybe are a little apprehensive about winter hiking, I do encourage people to go hiking in every season, especially if you live in an area that has different seasons where
Hmm.
nature changes. Because it actually is very fun to see your
It's so
favorite trails
fun.
and landscapes different times of the year. And I know that like when I'm out hiking, like it's a totally different vibe. We have beech trees here and they keep their leaves in the winter. They get all
Yeah.
crispy and they're orange and they're very ghostly like among the kind of gray and white landscape. And I just love that I can hear them rustle in the winter,
Mm.
and it's like the loudest thing in the forest because everything else is like dampened with the snow, right?
Yeah.
So there's just so much to see, even if
I
you've
feel
been to the
like
trail over and over and over and over.
one of my favorite joys too in the winter hiking is like I love being bundled up, but then my face showing and being cold. Like I love that feeling of my face being cold, but like I'm still cozy and I'm out there hiking. Like I don't know why. I just really like that.
Yeah, there is something about like being when you learn how to like layer and like the
Right.
type of gear you're going to be comfortable in. There is like a, oh, this feels like so great. And then if you get warm, you get that brisk breeze on your face. So what about you? What does training or like staying active when you slow down look like? Or do you
Yeah,
slow down, Allison?
yeah, like I think it depends on the year. I think I tend to some years I treat this more of a season of rest, kind of like what you were explaining. Like I slow things down. My goals are more just about being consistent and like rather than being around big adventure where it's like in the spring and summer and fall, like tend to be when I plan more of my big things. And so I'm training more. So yeah, winter usually is slower in that regards. But climbing, I feel like you don't really ever have to stop setting big goals. Like you can keep going. So a lot of my focus this year has been climbing and that's been consistent. And like I still have big goals around that. And like I guess when this airs, I will be in Spain, I think, when this episode's
Yeah.
airs. But like, yeah, that's been a big goal. Like I'm hoping to get some like, tough leads out there and like do some big things. So I haven't really ramped climbing down. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, like for you personally, you just have to decide what kind of I think no matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you decide your season's going to be like. But I just always encourage people to be purposeful about it. You're like, I want this to be a season of a rest, and then don't give yourself shit if you're not like doing big things because you purposefully decided you wanted it to be a slower season and like own that decision. And
And
then
this is
if,
why I love seeing nature change, right? Because we love
yes,
talking about getting lessons from nature.
yeah,
And
nature
so
and the
like
outdoors.
and so being with nature and being attentive to nature, like nature slows down, trees go dormant, animals go
Yes.
hibernate. Like
You
we
can
can
take your
learn.
cues from the seasons.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't always have to line up with the seasons either, but you can like allow yourself to have these different seasons where consistency and perfection are like two different things, right? Like you can continue to be consistent with something and take a rest. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to have perfect attendance or always be doing all the things all the time.
Right, exactly. So, what kind of advice would you give someone who wants to still like move their body, maybe keep a baseline fitness during this? Like, they want to have a season of rest, but they want to keep a baseline fitness. But what it like also this comes up a lot. Like, what if they're struggling because they can't get outdoors as much because of snow, because it's busy, all the things? Like, what advice would you give that person?
Yes. So get creative with the ways that you move because maybe and that's not motivating to you. So maybe making it playful or changing it up, especially if like monotony is not your thing. I know for me, I do have to like make it playful or I do have to have like diversity in what I'm doing. YouTube is a great resource. You can find yoga videos, dance videos, workout videos, and those are all at home. So the barrier is very low, right? YouTube is free. You just like skip through the ads. Um, and you don't have to go anywhere and
Right.
you don't have to like have any special gear. Yes, so YouTube videos are great. I love using YouTube every day for like yoga, but you can find dance videos that can help with cardio. You can find workout videos if you really want to work on strength training, like high intensity interval, things like
Mhm.
that. And that's like a free resource, low cost or no cost at all if you're not buying premium. So you can do it at home, no special gear. So that's a very easy way to get a little active at home. You might find indoor spaces to walk, like if you have an indoor mall or indoor track and field track, and then stairwells at work or in parking garages too. We have one student who did a lot of her training on stairwells at work.
Yep.
She would get a little movement at work, or she'd take a little 10-minute break to get moving, and she would go walk up and down in the stairwells.
Totally.
You might enroll in a group fitness class or hire a one-on-one trainer because if you really want to spark some motivation, I find that investing money and time are two ways to do it. Because if you invest money,
Yes.
you're like, I don't want to waste it.
Like I want to show up for that. Money is kind of like an exchange of
Yes.
energy. Like I want to show up for this and this is the way I'm showing it and then like show up for it.
Right. And sometimes I think too, and especially I feel that I observe this with women a lot, is that it's really hard for us to show up for ourselves. And so sometimes having someone else you might be
Mm.
accountable to, which may not be, if you aren't doing this with friends, still signing up with that one-on-one trainer. And I know like Planet Fitness, for example, that's included in any membership.
Mhm.
You can take advantage of a trainer at no
Yeah.
additional cost, right? So like showing up to that appointment. And then once you start showing up more, like you learn how to show up for yourself and let go of some like guilt or whatever self-judgment you have on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like Michael and I actually recently got a like a gym membership in our local area because we were like in the winter sometimes we make more excuses about not going out because we don't want to be cold. Like
Yes.
especially when we live really close to trails like right out the door. So sometimes it's less motivating to be like go run outside when it's freezing or there's snow. So we did get a gym membership for we're trying it out this winter season. We may keep it because it is pretty affordable, a little bit more expensive than Planet Fitness, but actually pretty affordable. I think $25 a person.
It's
And it gave
incredible.
us access to sauna and we're just doing some like strength training stuff with it. So yeah, like sometimes mixing it up and
Yeah. And
getting indoors helps.
And I think enrolling in like a gym like you guys do and
Yeah.
having specific goals, like if it was a rock climbing gym or enrolling in a group fitness class, also puts you out there to start building that adventure community. Like
Mhm.
if you're going out to a group fitness class, then there are probably people or a gym, probably people there that have some kind of similar goal as you. Maybe it's fitness, maybe it's getting
Yeah.
better in adventure or adventuring more. And then it's just being able to like start those conversations or it's just
Or
putting yourself in spaces where you're creating more opportunity to 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 make things happen that you want to see happen in your life.
And sometimes we talk about this with our clients. It's like when you step up into doing something, it kind of attracts people around you to wanting to do it too. So it's like if you signed up for a gym membership and your like friends are seeing you go every week to like be strong during the winter season when a lot of people are like kind of neglecting that, like that can be motivation sometimes to your friends to be like, okay, I'm doing this with you. Like, what days of the week are you going? Like, I
Yeah.
find that happens a lot. You
Yes.
end up eliciting a lot of community
Yes,
when you start training in the gym
I
for like
do.
big adventures.
Yes, yeah. A lot of my friends will also be like, hey, I also want to just get healthier and going to the gym with somebody and walking on treadmills and talking for an hour sounds a lot more fun than doing it by myself. So yeah, I will like just go to all my friends and be like, hey, if anyone wants to join me on hikes or like especially going to the gym. So enlisting a friend if you can, but again, if you don't have those friends, you're gonna have to like go practice being that friend.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then a lot of my friends will tell me, like, wow, I got on so many adventures this year because of you. I was just having a conversation with a close friend, and she was like, I did so much because of you. And in the same way, I felt the same about her in a different aspect of my life with like music, is we both had similar goals. Maybe they
Yeah.
weren't exactly the same. And then we supported each other and got to do some really cool things together. So,
So be
yes,
the friend.
yeah, be the friend. So, and with like if you're just nervous about trying, and we're talking about winter, but this could be true for like summer in like the desert, right? Like whatever your off season is. So, I would encourage you to like try winter sports. Like if you can learn how to do it safely, because that's the big thing with the off season. Like not only is it uncomfortable due to temperature differences, but like it might be a little scarier because the risks are higher because of the temperatures. But you might surprise yourself when you learn about stuff. So you might try winter sports you never saw yourself trying, like
You know,
snowshoeing, things like that.
and we do have a winter, maybe this is just reminding me, like I'll add this in the show notes. We have a winter hiking and camping workshop. It's not expensive. If you want to like explore that, you can check it out. It's like a help you be prepared for winter adventures sort of thing.
Yes. So this also, on the topic of training, we got this question from one of our clients, Carrie, recently that I thought would be cool to talk about. So she asked if my trip is more than 10 weeks out, should I wait to start training, prolong based training, or cycle my training plan, assuming that she has like 18 to 20 weeks?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like just for context for people, like in the backpacking badass program, if you're setting particularly if you're new to backpacking and it's your first time setting a goal or you're setting a big goal, we like to create like a 12-week, 12 weeks out from your goal training plan for your bigger goals. So this is kind of where Carrie's question is coming from. So you might be like, I know I have a big trip planning for, the summer, early summer or spring even, and maybe it's still like pretty far out, you have like 18 or 20 weeks till then. So you're not quite starting your 12-week plan. What should you do? And for me, that's like, I think it's totally up to you, like what feels fun for you. Um, I think it really can depend on the trip, like what kind of trip is it? I know we have a student like training for Kilimanjaro right now. And so
Hmm.
like maybe they want to extend their training and like take it even deeper, like further out. So if you have a really big goal, like maybe extending that training to be a little even further out than 12 weeks. But if you're just kind of looking to create a base, kind of what we've been talking about this, just start building a chill base training. And I think one of actually the most important things is like what you can do to set yourself up for success for the 12-week training plan is building in consistency. So if you can start working on showing up 3, 4 times a week to hike, to get on a treadmill, and that's just something you start ingraining as like a habit, like a consistent way you show up for yourself now, then when you get to your training plan, it's going to be so much easier to like show up for those training hikes and stuff that you're doing for your specific goal. So that would be like my biggest thing is like practicing that consistency goal. Okay. So I think like we talked a little bit about some of our clients, what they're doing with training. I think like let's just real quickly talk on the last hot topic because I know that we need to wrap up this. We both have some time constraints here, so we're kind of like gonna zoom through our last topic a little bit.
Allison and I could talk forever.
Yes, I know we were like, oh, we can do this in an hour, and I think
This is
that
why this is why we had to be coaches, right? Because we just like need certified yappers on talking about the outdoors.
So our third hot topic in the community that we had like listed for this conversation was around rock climbing actually, which I think it has a lot to do with the fact that our clients, like when they get into the hiking and backpacking in the outdoors and start kind of stepping into their adventurous identity, they start seeing that they can do things that they never knew that they could do before. Like rock climbing tends to be one of those things that wasn't on their radar before, but now they're like, I wonder like if I would enjoy that, if I would be into that. Um, why do you think we're hearing a lot about climbing right now in our backpacking badass community during this winter season, Kellie?
So first, I definitely agree about the identity shift because I think when our students start building that confidence with hiking and backpacking, that translates into all kinds of aspects of their life and outdoor adventure, right? They start, what else can I do? And so many of those skills that we teach will apply to different adventures.
Yeah.
So that's all to say that, people can join the backpacking badass and take it so much further than backpacking with the skills, confidence, and the know-how that they gain. So
And the
I
coaches, because a lot of us climb.
yes, so I think on that topic, like with rock climbing, it's on the top of everyone's mind right now because you have your climbing goals that you've kind of been talking about checking in with on your
Yeah.
we do a momentum Monday to claim your goals and a follow-up Friday posts in our group it's like weekly reflection like we talked about earlier like
Right.
okay, if you didn't get them done, that's okay, but like why? But also, we do encourage like rest is a goal. So, anyway, you've been very vocal about your climbing goals and the Spain trip, which when this airs, you'll be out on. And so that'll be of an exciting recap to watch for on like our social media channels. We've got the 2025 Joshua Tree Retreat. That's going to be in March. So right now,
Mhm.
you and Kate are working with clients to kind of get people prepared, and you do a few check-in calls with them.
Right.
And Kate also, we're celebrating her recently
She's on
because
our team. Yeah.
yes, Kate is our blog manager. She got SPI certified. So
Yeah. It's
that is a
very
rock
exciting.
climbing certification for anyone unfamiliar. And she's an awesome coach, honestly, all around, but especially for people that want to expand into climbing. And she was explaining to us when she was getting trained and she was taking her SPI certification and exam. And also she was like, she's a rock climbing guide as well on the side. And she is like one of few women guides in her area and maybe like well, even fewer that are actually SPI certified. So she would be able to be more specific because I'm not a rock climber. So, but we've been celebrating her a lot in the community. And so she often talks about in her Q&A calls how people can get into rock climbing and advice for them. And she also just happened to like know a rock climbing coach and was able to recommend this person to a student who was looking for a climbing coach. And Kate just happened to know a woman that was a coach in that student's climbing area. So that was
Yeah.
incredible.
It's interesting.
And
We end up doing like a lot of kind of side coaching in the backpacking badass community for
Yes.
people who want advice and stuff about rock climbing.
All kinds of stuff too, right? Like I do kayaking and stuff like that. And we all just have so many different interests as coaches and apply our skills in different ways. But I also feel like we get a lot of students in their 50s to 70s so often. And it makes
Hmm.
me reflect on how access to outdoor recreation continues to increase for women and other underrepresented or marginalized groups that have been historically gate kept from these activities and outdoor
Yeah.
spaces. So, for example, when I was studying biology, that was the time when the field was drastically changing and shifting to be predominantly women entering the field. And so I think about that so often because we do get students. We have one student that we've hiked with, and her trail name is the third act because she is in her 60s deciding what this new stage of her
Next
life is going
chapter.
to be after like getting to kind of focus on herself a little bit more. So I
Yeah.
think about that a lot in the community with how diverse our students are on like for some women, this may be the time, the first time in their lives where they really have had the opportunity to get into their outdoor
Some extra.
passions or they're reigniting them from when they were, in
Yeah.
college and then life came and
Yeah,
went,
that's so common
you
for a
know?
lot of our clients. Yeah.
So I think about that a lot. So
Okay, I think like maybe to wrap this up really quickly, because I know we kind of have a time limit. If somebody, I think I'm just going to jump to like, if somebody was asking, because this happens in our group, like people ask us, if I wanted to start rock climbing and learning how to rock climb, what would our advice be to get started? And so if anybody's kind of like listening to that and they're interested in this, I would really recommend that gyms are a great way to start. Like you can start bouldering. Bouldering's very accessible because you don't have to have a partner necessarily, especially in the climbing gym. I recommend a lot of my clients who want to get started to sign up for an intro to climbing class. And I think like definitely like Kellie was talking about earlier, try to put yourself out there and meet people, like actually introduce yourself to people, even if it seems a little weird. And a lot of my clients, because maybe they're starting this a little older in life, they can feel like intimidated to go to the gym and see all these like younger people climbing. But like, I feel like the climbing community is really open. And when you get like people can look really serious, but once you start talking to people, they really are interested in helping you.
and
I don't know if you've had that experience, Kellie, when
well,
you go climbing.
I feel like I've had opposites. Well, I have like, been in environments where it's mostly young people climbing, but the last time I went to like a top rope climbing gym, I asked a friend to come with me. And it was like 2.5 hours from my like where we live. And it was a Monday, so it was wonderful. The gym was empty, but this one woman showed up and she reminded me of, I think her name is Deidre. It's Alex Honnold's mom. She wrote a
Yeah,
book, The Sharp End of Life. So this woman, I think she was probably in her 60s. She climbed every single route in that gym and she flew up
right.
those climbs. So I think that even putting yourself out there and putting yourself in these spaces, you are going to be surprised at the people who are also showing up.
Exactly. Like it's all kinds of people. And I think my biggest encouragement is just like to choose to belong, even if it feels a little awkward at first. If you're like new to it and you don't know what you're doing, like be willing to feel a little awkward, a little out of place. It's okay to be new at something and just decide that you belong there. And then that's when you'll can really open up to like, how rock climbing can be really fun and it can help you feel stronger. It's like a fun way to like do strength training and all of those things. In that regard, I think like another great way is like joining an outdoor guided experience, kind of like we do with our Joshua Tree climbing retreats and other climbing retreats that we do, because it's a safe place to explore if you like climbing in a fun environment with a great group of women. And then if you have friends you can enlist on the learning journey with you too, like Kellie was mentioning, inviting her friend to the gym, that can be a fun way. But, there's all kinds of ways that you can get started with rock climbing and seeing if it's for you and seeing if you enjoy it. There's definitely safety considerations that you want to learn as you're rock climbing, but going to a gym, a lot of times they'll start to introduce you to some of those safety concepts. And then if you want to take it outdoors, either joining a group of people that like, have those certifications that can teach you safely, or you can start taking classes where you can learn some of those things. So, Kellie, I don't know how you are in time. I think you had mentioned that you needed to
It's
bounce.
okay. I've got some time. So one point that I do want to add to what you were just saying about like showing up and putting yourself out there is that your desires for yourself can inspire others.
Yeah.
So your efforts to create more adventure in your life may have this ripple effect, whether it's on your friends, your loved ones, friends that you're making. It might even be something like, I'm in a climbing desert where I'm at. There's not outdoor places to climb unless I go 5 hours away or indoor places. We just got a bouldering gym, so that's nice. But I know a lot of people that did so many DIY projects, I mean, it was just they made whatever they wanted to do work. I remember being in college and knowing people that made
Oh,
bouldering
yeah.
gyms in their garage, or our little local outfitter, our gear outfitter, they had they just used a little basement space to make a tiny little bouldering area for the serious climbers in town. So whatever, if you like stay committed and you stay open to whatever that looks like, putting a rock wall in your garage or basement, or having
You
a
know,
little finger
Michael and I
crimp
used to
over,
have one of those in Bakersfield.
yeah, one of your finger crimps, over a door that you just hang on, a few minutes every morning.
Yeah.
That's just, showing up for yourself is going to have this ripple effect. And you may be, this titan in your community that moves the needle forward for
Right.
outdoor adventure for yourself and others. So
I think
go
that's
for
so
it.
true. I think it's so true. And I think our students see that a lot. And this is what I really encourage with community. Like, I think like if you show up for yourself first and you like get out there, then you will start noticing, you start to attract that community that you're looking for and like being that example, because I think so many people are too shy to go for it. And so like you stepping into that kind of brings people out of like their shell and wanting to try it too. So I
And
think
what a
it's,
beautiful life, right? To share
yeah,
that with others. It's just
yeah,
taken me so many cool places. I could talk about it forever.
I know. We could talk forever, literally, but I think this is a great place for us to wrap up our very first hot topics in the backpacking badass community for this episode. Again, if you enjoyed this style of episode, you like to hear us like have some banter on some topics that are coming up in our community, what our thoughts are around it. Um, Maybe this will be something that we do more often as well. So definitely reach out, let us know, Instagram or email or anything like that. But thank you everyone for chiming into this episode. Thank you, Kellie, for joining me in this conversation.
Thank you so
And
much for having me. I can't wait to do this again.
yes, definitely. All right, everyone, we'll talk next week and see you soon. Bye. Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.